Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon session. It is the second day of the conference, and for the past 1.5 days, we have been discussing a lot of topics on indigenous knowledge and climate change. So I'm Dr. Archana Kujur from Department of Geography, Central University of Karnataka, and I will be moderating this session. So in this session, we have a social geographer, Dr. Lai. So he's a social geographer teaching currently at Royal Thimphu College, Royal University of ardent interest in the urban livelihood and contemporary urban development. He has done extensive research on growth and of Thimphu city. Some of his recent works are published in SAGE, Journal of South Asia Research, Wiley Journal of Gender, Work and Organization, OUP edited book, which is forthcoming, to mention a few. During the last few years, he has worked in a collaborative research with international organizations like the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, based in Kathmandu, Nepal. Currently, he's writing a book chapter for Routledge Handbook of Asian Cities, and alongside working in a collaborative project entitled Circulating Circular and Ecological Sphere with the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, Japan. Welcome, sir. So with us, we also have Professor Chennavir RM, who will be the discussion of this session. Professor Chennavir is a social worker and head of the Department of Social Work, Central University of Karnataka. He undertook several research projects on areas of mental health, communal rights, rural governance and technology, disability and urban research funded by UGC, ICSSR, CSR, and Government of Karnataka. He's published several papers and books concerning students, unrest, social welfare, policies, and intergenerational gaps. His areas of interest in social development, social entrepreneurship, and social transformation. Welcome to this session, sir. So now I would request Dr. Lai Shingping Karmarang to talk on urban Himalayas, livable and sustainable cities, seeing through the lens of indigenous and traditional worldviews. Sir, you can start.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Archana Kujur, for the kind introduction. I am really happy to be part of this conference. It's my pleasure and privilege, definitely, and honor actually to be here. I'd like to thank the organizing team for giving me this privilege and opportunity. I have few slides. Can you enable this?
Yes, you can share your screen. Yes.
I'd like to share my screen. All right, so the title of my topic is Urban Himalayas, Livable and Sustainable Cities, Seeing Through the Lens of Indigenous and Traditional Worldview. I would like to say before I begin my talk that this is actually mainly based on the Thimphu city and not exactly the entire Himalayan cities. I must tell now that it is mainly focused on the Thimphu city, that is the capital of Bhutan. Right, so to begin with a brief introduction, contemporary cities are often projected through tangible and external dimension of cities with major emphasis on upscaling of urban infrastructure. In the process, what we actually see is the debate and contestation converging on the politics of global city, world-class city, urban renewal project, smart cities, cities for all, so on and so forth. Intangible yet inherent in indigenous and traditional worldview, Bhutanese worldview in the present context, the elements of interiority as inner feeling and quality, such as emotion, value system, belief system, cultural practices, inter alia through leader attention in urban development discourse and planning. Contrary to the dominant contemporary urban development policies that prioritize urban transformation through injection of high-tech and smart infrastructure, I draw on the Buddhist perspective of development and worldviews that actually integrate material and non-material elements or dimension in building livable and sustainable cities, taking Thimphu City as a case in point. Underpinned by the country's unique development philosophy that is cross-national happiness. Interiority is actually inherent in the indigenous and traditional belief system that actually constitute today in the development policy in the country, one of the pillars of current development planning and policies here in the country. Today, I would like to say that Thimphu City typifies, a happy city, perhaps one of the happiest cities in South Asia in its own way, with very low, let us say, urban poverty rate, less than 1%, a city without slum, relatively better air quality, high proportion of household having access to safe and clean drinking water. All that can be attributed actually to the community's strong affiliation to the indigenous knowledge and practice of development. A few days ago, World Resource Institute has just released its synthesis report, highlighting all the concerns that are taking place in Global South. And the crisis actually is deepening, spreading. Millions of people are dwelling in an informal settlement slums. So a lot of concerns were highlighted. Now, one point that I would like to trace from this actually highlight is that how far we can actually make sustainable cities in times like this, when the whole world is shattered by a global pandemic. Now, my point is that the so-called smart cities concept, global cities concept, to my understanding, does not really currently secure life. We see many people, thousands, if not millions, returning home from urban to rural villages in India or in many South Asian countries. So we can definitely, raise the question: what kind of promise the smart cities or global cities make for all of us in times like this? So to counter that, actually, I actually engaged myself into this indigenous worldviews of sustainable development of cities. So I will, as I mentioned, that my work is mainly focused on Thimphu. The talk that today I'm giving will be also confined to Thimphu City and the plan that has been guided significantly by the principle of cross-national happiness. And that is definitely a homegrown and indigenous development philosophy. Change, progress, economic development, human development, sustainable development are a few development concepts that have been gained overwhelming currency in the development discourse in the last few decades. Apparently, contemporary growth phenomena do not really do justice to to the purpose of development itself, having triggered numerous social and environmental crises or issues across the world. To be precise, in many developing countries, contemporary development processes are accompanied by, as we all know, unequal distribution and accelerating spatial inequalities. And that we have seen in many developing countries. Scholarships on development and growth of the 60s and the 1970s evidence that economic growth in the 60s and 70s did not take place as desired and expected, did not really elevate poverty, malnutrition, and other determinants of development in many developing countries. This led to a search for alternative measures for development, taking into consideration of interplay between non-economic factors and economic factors. This was also marked by major redirection in approach to quality of life studies and welfare studies in many social science disciplines, and we call that quantitative revolution in geography. So there was a major redirection in our approach to welfare studies or quality of life studies in many social science disciplines. Interestingly, it was during this period of methodological shift in many social science disciplines that His Majesty, the fourth king of Bhutan, conceptualized or introduced the idea of cross-national happiness. He questioned the prevailing measurement system that cross-national product alone could deliver happiness and well-being to the society. So he questioned this idea and a concept of cross-domestic product, and he put forward the idea of cross-national happiness. And he declared that cross-national happiness is more important than cross-domestic product. What actually impressed or astonished me is His Majesty is not a scholar, not a philosopher, but he has this kind of very far-sightedness idea and vision about development. And by the way, I must also mention that when he introduced this concept, he was just a teenage monarch. So that actually impressed me, a lot, how actually they conceptualize this, or he conceptualized this philosophy. And today, all the development programs and policies in the country are guided by the philosophy of cross-national happiness. So taking into consideration of economic and non-economic factors, cross-national happiness measures development in a more holistic manner and believe that beneficial development of human society takes place when material and spiritual development occur side by side as complements and reinforcing each other. I want to repeat again that cross-national happiness was conceptualized with a belief that beneficial development of human society takes place when material and spiritual development occurs side by side to complement, to balance and reinforce each other. So this is a kind of middle path of development that the country takes and measure and consider this as a very comprehensive approach or measures of development. Officially, cross-national happiness was declared as the government official development philosophies in 1999. Cross-national happiness is essentially a summarization of the basic tenets of Vajrayana Buddhism, which embrace harmony and compassion, which embrace relationship between human being, and nature. Today, the Constitution of Bhutan, Article 99, if we read, it is one of the responsible of the government to create a condition that will enable the pursuit of gross national happiness. When we look at the origin or the history of this philosophy, interestingly, it is found that the philosophy of happiness has been inherent in Bhutanese society or in Bhutanese culture. If we look at the 1729 legal code of the country, it says that if the government cannot create happiness for its people, there is no purpose for the government to exist. This is very interesting. So the idea of happiness or the philosophy of happiness definitely in the Buddhist society is not new. It has been in that way practiced for quite some time, for many centuries. With that, now I'd like to come to the Thimphu city. The 1950s mark a turning point in the history of Bhutan, a decade popularly known for the dissolution of the centuries-old self-imposed isolation policy. Bhutan slowly finding its way to modernization through gradual transition to its political system, for which we consider as Bhutan the last nation in the world to embrace modernity, while opening up to the outside world during the 50s. The need for an ideal administrative center was felt, which resulted in shifting the capital of the country from Punakha, ancient capital, to the present Thimphu city in the 1950s. So His Majesty King Chikmi Dorji wanted to consciously work to create institution of statehood in the new power center of Thimphu. To this end, a massive revamp of the administrative center, that is Tasichong, that's a fortress, was carried out with the financial assistance from the government of India. Until then, Thimphu had been a collection of scattered settlements with activities revolving around certain religious structure and the administrative center of the Tasichong, that is the administrative headquarters of the country. The town population was estimated to be around 3,500 in the 60s. Now it has population about 1,14,000 as of 2017 census. So development program were introduced, or first integrated development plan of the country was introduced in 1960 with the help of the Planning Commission of India. Moving on, today, Thimphu city is considered as a dream city of all the Bhutanese, and that is clearly mentioned in the Thimphu structure plan. So in 1998, this is a direction given by the Council of Ministers that Thimphu should be declared as a dream city for all Bhutanese, that is culturally vibrant, environmentally sustainable, and above all, people friendly. One interesting point I'd like to mention here is, for Bhutanese and for Bhutan, Thimphu city is not only a commercial hub, it is not only an administrative center or a mere capital of the country, but it is the city that symbolizes and presents the identity of the entire community as nation as a whole. So it is the most salient image of what Bhutan is, and what Pudhan can be. The image of the capital sends a message around the globe about the uniqueness and essence of the nation, and it is special culture. The image of capital is intricately linked with the enrichment and survival of the very idea of Pudhan. So it is not a mere capital of the country, but it represents, it carries, it bears the identity of the entire community of the country. Such claim and propagation are built on the cultural belief of the Biber, which is very, very different from conventional definition of development. Development through preservation and promotion of culture as Bhutanese identity has been, as I mentioned as mentioned earlier, has been inherent in Bhutanese society and has been also a recurrent theme in various development plans and policies. So much so that for Bhutan, true meaning of development is embedded in the cultural identity and value system. The government therefore promotes the country's unique cultural and promotes the country's unique culture as a weapon. Government, I want to repeat, promotes country's culture as a weapon which can be used to preserve national sovereignty. The latest 5-year plan, 2018 to 23, enlisted preserving and promoting culture and tradition to strengthen our identity and sovereignty. So Bhutan is very much conscious about sovereignty, about culture, about development, but all these elements are interrelated, connected, and they are not discussed in isolation as far as the system or community development as a whole is concerned here in the country. One of the major themes of the Thimpu structure plan is the religious and cultural meaning of the city. Thimpu Valley is enriched with several religious and historical sites and structure that have witnessed Thimpu's glorious past. The city is surrounded by a system of monasteries, temples, prayer flags that actually preside over every thought and actions of the Biber. They are well and truly the heritage presence of Bhutan. Development, as I mentioned earlier, in Bhutanese culture belief is ultimately interpreted as spiritual development, not only economic development, not only infrastructure development, but it is ultimately interpreted as spiritual development. So spiritual connection with other elements cannot be ignored or is not ignored as far as development policies or philosophy of this community is concerned. So all these religious sites are revamped and preserved, not only for tourism purpose, but they are important markers of Bhutanese identity. Consciousness about culture is also clearly manifested in traditional architecture. All the buildings in the city or outside for that matter, both residential or institutes are designed as per Bhutanese architecture guideline. The government complex and its environs are the essential theme of the city and the main asset of the nation. The setting of this administrative headquarters, that is Dasechong, or say in other words, fortress, is therefore crucial to the success of the plan, that is Thimpu structure plan. Traditional architecture is adapted, indeed, over many centuries, making suitable the local environment, climate, material, technology, cultural tradition, and spiritual belief. Thimpu structure plan is also strengthened by the set of principle of intelligent urbanism. Now, this principle focuses on balance between nature and tradition, balance between community and environment, balance between people and the surrounding. One of the main focuses of this intelligent urbanism is to create conviviality, social conviviality, sustainable city or livable city, and which are actually inherent in the Bhutanese culture and practices. Local area plan through land pooling strategy has created the urban neighborhoods very convivial, thus making the community more vibrant and represent true image of the nation. Before I conclude, I would like to show some of the pictures of Thimphu City. This pictures, the first one actually is for say 70s and 80s, and the below photo is for say or taken sometimes in 2010. So in this few decades, Thimphu City has experienced rapid expansion of city growth. And the next one is the core area. Actually, this is the left one is taken sometimes in the 1960s, and the right hand side photo is the present one. And these are some of the features that we will see everywhere in Thimphu City. Prayer wheel, and this actually shows how conscious they are with the architecture. And this is mandatory for all individuals who would like to or who wants to build houses here in the city. So they cannot follow Western style of architecture. Prayer words that also we will observe or see, notice in and around cities here in Thimphu. Prayer flags. Okay, so with that, I would like to conclude by saying that even though Bhutan is relatively small in terms of population and also geographical area, the country has been very conscious when it comes to development. The country's development philosophy, I would like to say that is cross-national happiness has actually protected or promoted the country from the contemporary dominant and pervasive spread of capitalism. Some scholars make a statement that the kingdom, that is Bhutan, has actually achieved the goal aspired by most of the smart cities nowadays, which is making people happy, living great life, and preserving the environment without or with less technology and innovation. It was an accomplishment just with the right culture via good and wise governance in practice. So all that can be actually attributed, as I mentioned in my introduction, to the community's strong affiliation to indigenous knowledge and practices of development. I would like to also mention here that Thimphu is one of the happiest cities or towns in the country. Thank you. I'd like to conclude here. Over to you, Arjuna.
Thank you, sir. So that was a very interesting insight. So I'm also from a village which is very close to Bhutan. So we have seen those kind of buildings that you're talking about. I think it's predominantly monasteries, I think in places like Lavagaon, Lole, I think they are constructed in similar fashion. So although I've never been to Bhutan, so that was a very excellent presentation, sir. So now I would ask our discussant to take this session forward and give his comments. Hello, Chanavir sir.
Yeah.
Chanavir?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, thank you, Leadership. It was a wonderful presentation on urban Himalayas. You were able to bring how Bhutan is a model as far as climate change challenging issues are concerned. Of course, there are demographic and geographical issues that we need to look at. But Bhutan ultimately, as you have highlighted on gross national happiness, certainly it is going to be a model both socially, economically, environmentally, culturally, in all respects. So you have highlighted very important aspects of urban Himalayas. Thank you very much. Archana, again, we have one more this thing, or this is going to be the last? Any other lecture is there, or volunteers? Hello.
Yes, I think this is the last for today.
Leadership, he is the only speaker, no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I can take up my points in detail.
Yes, sir, surely. You can take another 15 minutes.
Okay, sure. Just I will take my this thing.
Yeah. So one thing what is important, I would like to take up some of the important aspects related to urban Himalayas. I start with the mission that we have as academic institution and communities with regard to sustainable development goals. Sustainable cities, communities, then climate action, responsible consumption and production. These are very important sustainable development goals that we need to keep in mind in the light of what Leadership Khamrang has presented, keeping Bhutan as model. Himalayan region is very active tectonically, geographically, demographically, and which is putting a lot of stress, challenge to Himalayan regions, both in terms of space, in terms of forest, in terms of biodiversity. The challenges are many for the Himalayan region. And Himalayan region is shared by India, Bhutan, Nepal, China, Pakistan. So it is shared by all these countries. It requires international cooperation and collaboration in terms of dealing with understanding and handling the climate change issues in Himalayan region. We are all in the process of urbanization to the fullest extent. In terms of rural and tribal communities, the population is getting reduced, and we are all becoming both socially and in terms of lifestyle more urbanization oriented. Habitations are increasing, human needs are increasing, but the resources that we have in terms of land, space, water, atmosphere, there is a lot of pressure as far as the challenging issues are ahead all of us. Most important aspects that I would like to highlight is that in the name of development, what Leadership was talking about, that we are focusing more on the infrastructure, providing comfort to people in terms of roads, transport, air condition, and all comfort facilities in the name of development. This is causing a lot of pressure and stress on the land resource, biodiversity, and also all our urban oriented economic activities, human activities are putting pressure and the challenges with regard to climate change we are encountering. We know that the climate change is a serious issue, especially in the Himalayan regions. The climate issues that were there before 1940s, 50s, or 60s have completely reversed now. The climate change issues in terms of decreased rainfall, increased temperature, and depleting forest cover, biodiversity, and increasing human habitation, all these and increasing infrastructure in the name of development, all these are causing vulnerability and risks in terms of climate change. Almost 40% reduction in rainfall we are witnessing, and temperature is increasing almost 0.86 at the rate of that in the last few decades. Most important aspect, that Himalayan region, which was rich in biodiversity and all, but now when we look at 2007 onwards, these regions also experienced dry conditions. So that is a very important challenge for all of us to understand intensively and look at with the open perspective. Our indigenous knowledge, what we talk about in terms of conservation of water, in terms of human habitation, in terms of cropping pattern, cultivation, our lifestyle, whether it is food or dress or human habitation, what Lee Shipim was demonstrating in his presentation, giving Bhutan example. Our lifestyle had changed. We are deeply influenced by westernization, as he was mentioning. You are very much right, sir. And naturally, westernization is anti-indigenous, anti to the local lifestyle or local conditions. It is in a way oppression or encroachment of Western culture, lifestyle by the local communities. So when we are replicating or imitating those lifestyle issues, so that will put pressure on the environment, the surrounding environment in which we are living. Our culture is encroached, our lifestyle is encroached, our economies are encroached, our demographies are encroached, our climate changes naturally will pose all these kinds of problems for human happiness and development also. We are trying to adapt to the changing issues of the climate change, but how are we going to deal with these climate changes in terms of vulnerability, risks that are going to increase from year to year? We all know that tectonically this Himalayan region is very active. So how are we going to face or anticipate or handle the climate change issues in terms of flooding or incessant rainfalls or depletion temperature and the human needs in terms of food, water, air. These are all challenges that Himalayan region is going to face. Whatever problems we have been facing in major cities, be it in India, Mumbai or Bangalore or Delhi or other cities, same problems or same urban issues will be witnessed in the Himalayan region too. Population wise, Bhutan is very safe. Nepal, it is equivalent to the population of Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand or Sikkim. So they are very safe. But the reason in where human habitation is increasing, we need to change our development programs, development plans, development policies. So Himalayan regions, we need not look at just one country perspective, whether it is Indian perspective or Bhutan perspective or Nepali perspective, but we need to involve because we are all sharing the Himalayan regions. In the same way, we need to share in terms of evolving international collaborative policies, plans, programs to share. When we are sharing the resources, we need to share the restoration policies and programs to encounter or to handle the climate change issues that we are going to face in Himalayan regions. So the most important issues that we need to look at that I have highlighted so far, certainly if we work collaboratively with cooperation, because our 17th development goals talks about collaboration and partnership, certainly Himalayan region demands sustainable development goal in terms of partnership and collaboration, where different countries, different societies, they share the vision. Shared vision will certainly lead to protection, conservation, regeneration of natural resources, biodiversity, which will help in turn the human habitation or human societies to flourish. So we have to understand the behavior of both geographical, social, cultural, climatical, and we accordingly we need to tailor-made our policies, programs with partnership of all these countries who are sharing Himalayan regions. Certainly the economic activities in terms of tourism also putting a lot of pressure, but how do we imbibe a lifestyle which is eco-friendly, and how do we introduce mixture of indigenous knowledge and modern agricultural practices as far as agriculture in this region is concerned? How do we protect the soil fertility, the purity of the water, purity of the natural resources like air, so that we are able to achieve or sustain the sustainable development goals in all respects. So I am very grateful to Department of Folkloristic and Tribal Studies that they have taken up this international seminar where the focus is on indigenous knowledge. We need to revisit, rediscover our traditional knowledge. We need to have at least hybridization of indigenous knowledge and modern techniques. So we need to integrate that. Otherwise, we are going against the nature, and climatic change issues are going to multiply hereafter. So if we are able to combine and come innovatively with traditional knowledge and modern techniques and technology, which will support the climate, geography, economy, culture, and all aspects, including development, certainly we will be able to achieve sustainable development goals through having international cooperation, collaboration. I personally thank Lee Shipim for his presentation. I thank Longshe Bain for her hilarious task, very creative task for organizing this event and bringing people from varied disciplines on single platform and helping us to discuss various climate change issues and giving it indigenous knowledge perspective and helping both amalgamation of these different perspectives and leading us towards sustainable development goals that is a target for all of us to reach and achieve. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So we have some more time left. So if I could ask a question to our speaker, Dr. Lee Shipim.
Yes.
So I think I have seen part of Bhutan's and existed with the environment, right? So the same I think applies to your city as well. So what would you suggest? Could we take these kind of cities for cities that exist in India? Like there are huge cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Hyderabad, which are just road. Anything that we can learn from?
Exactly. I would like to start in this way. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bhutan established, or Buddhists, and that way established a strong linkage between their practice and religion. So here, when I say religion, it is not other religion than the Buddhism in that way. So the idea of cross-national happiness actually is, derived from that Vajrayana Buddhism that mainly focuses on compassion, connection between nature and human society. So this is quite contrast to modern idea of development. Now, my suggestion or my point will be, as long as we go for the capitalist system of economy, it may be, or it will be difficult to actually apply this kind of philosophy. Here, they focus on happiness or spiritual happiness, not actually the material happiness. So happiness has to be derived from, actually not from material, or happiness has to be balancing between material well-being and spiritual well-being. And that is one of the reasons that even though economically the society is poor, in terms of happiness, they are actually far ahead of many cities, many towns in their own way. Now, to put this philosophy, or to apply this philosophy in other cities in India, definitely there'll be a lot of challenges, because the system of economy is completely capitalist system of economy, and that's quite contradictory to what actually here people practice. So as far as capability of this philosophy in other countries is concerned, I have actually very bleak hope. Yeah, but may not be definitely there's a Buddhism philosophy, but if we revive our traditional indigenous practices, and that is what we observe in every community, irrespective of village, town, every individual has, in that way, his or her own, sort of understanding towards environment, understanding towards surrounding. And if we can revive this, I feel that definitely, relationship between man and environment can be restored, reestablished. I feel that it is.
Can I add?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So here, what they actually state is that cross-national happiness is Buddhist version of sustainable development. The cross-national happiness is Buddhist version of sustainable development. And in other countries, sustainable development has to be taken place through transformation of our economic system, transformation of all the determinants of development. But here, simply focus on the contentment, satisfaction, and balance between material well-being and spiritual well-being. And I can also give you one example. One of the poorest district, or let me say poorest district here in the country, actually is the happiest district. So the poorest district, there is one district by the name Kasa. That's the northern part of the country. In terms of accessibility, in terms of any other development activities, the district is far behind any other districts. But in terms of happiness, that district stands out, as the happiest district.
I think Professor Chennavar would like to add something to it. So please.
Yeah. Actually, our development paradigm that we talk about, capitalistic centered development model, we are all driven by the capitalistic economic visions or paradigms that drive our policies, programs, economies, and that's where we see eroding cultural values or traditional values or indigenous knowledge to the onslaught of Western modern paradigms that guide the development programs. See development in terms of infrastructure, which is again materialistic in nature, objectification of our vision, ideas, values, principles in terms of materialistic oriented, becoming materialistic oriented. What gross national happiness Lee Shiping was talking about, it is more spiritual in nature, very much moral in nature, which is totally missing in our development paradigm. It has no space, no space at all, no recognition at all in our development paradigm. It is by greed, desires, profit maximization, which approach all our development ideas and paradigms and practices. So that is where, be it agriculture, we have lost indigenous knowledge. We are no more adopting indigenous knowledge system. We are more towards, we are very unsustainable as far as agriculture system is concerned. I know in India, we know the contribution of Green Revolution because it was a need of the time, but that is not, we also know that it is not sustainable. And we are facing a lot of problems in different agroclimatic zones, how Green Revolution is able to contribute to different patterns of changes in agriculture, whether eroding soil fertility, polluting the aquifer or water resources, even contributing to human health hazards and all. The real challenge is even our education is very much modern development oriented. What we think development, suppose if we live in AC room, we think it is development. If we sit comfortable chair, we think it is development. Our focus is not on non-material things, what Lee Shiping was talking about, which is moral and spiritual in nature. What he was referring to Buddhism or even Jainism. If you look at many religions, they always keep environment in the center. But what happens is those religious values, whatever may be religion, but those religious values and principles are eroded by the onslaught of the present market economy, which promote a different kind of development paradigm, which is detrimental to environment, culture, society, altogether. Even include, you take our food habits, whatever food habits which were pro-cultural and pro-agroclimatic zone friendly, they're all eroded by the Western food practices. In the same way, agriculture, the food habits have also changed. Our dressing style have also changed. What Lee Shiping was talking about, the dressing pattern of Bhutan. In the name of modernity, we have changed our lifestyle. Our desires have increased in terms of different things. We want more. If we cannot limit the needs, again, the Gandhian model, what he thinks, this nature has everything to fulfill everybody's needs, but not greed. It's very important that guides our sustainable development. So, but what is happening is that we have to integrate it into our lifestyle in day-to-day activities. how are we going to adopt, integrate sustainable development goal in terms of principles, in terms of values, in terms of action, in terms of behavioral domain of every human being, be it child, be it mother, be it youth, adult, elderly, everybody, whether it is intergenerational also. How are we going to integrate or socialize this eco-friendly, sustainable development goal oriented lifestyle or living? How do we live with our own fellow beings? How do we live with the animals? How do we live with trees around? How do we live with the whole environment around? So how do we keep the whole environment with all kind of biodiversity around us? Even urban habitation, how can we replicate the biodiversity at the micro level, at least, be it water conservation, be it small plantation, be it growing urban vegetation over our rooftop, and changing our day-to-day lifestyle in terms of food consumption, in terms of water consumption, in terms of our human living in the houses. So if we are able to integrate this, development and lifestyle, which is driven by the lifestyle, the principle, eco-friendly lifestyle principles and values, whether it is religion or education, if it guides properly, certainly we will be able to see eco-friendly lifestyle, and we can take societies towards achieving sustainable development goals. I think that I wanted to add. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I think with this, we'll wrap the session. And I think the takeaway message that I would say is that happiness and is inverse development, the current concept of what we call as development. So I think there is a need to go back to the indigenous knowledge and at least try to implement it in the future cities that we may plan. So it is kind of impossible for us to do it with the current cities, but we can look forward to implement it later. So thank you, Dr. Lee Shing Ping and Professor Chennaveer for being part of this incredible session. So with this, I'm closing the session. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you.